Okay, guys, over the last 10 plus years, close to 15 years now, I've been teaching this class to thousands of students that have taken CISSP classes with me. I've always given my students some good exam tips, and I'm going to share some of those tips with you guys today. And these are going to be the most important tips that I give students, anybody that's taken a CISSP exam. Let's see what it entails. So, Andrew's test taking tips. Number one. For a CISSP candidate, I want you to do at least 2,000 practice questions. A lot of students do 3,000 practice questions. Where do you get the questions from? No real source will ever give you the best representation or the questions word for word. There's no brain dump of this test, basically. So what you want to look for is good practice questions. Test questions from companies such as Boston is okay. Test questions from CCCure, you guys can look that up, that is also okay. So doing as many test questions that you can find around the internet or in your classes that you may sign up for your study guide, the more the better. You want to be able to have the knowledge. Now these questions are scenario based and you got to choose the best answer. And I always tell my students, you can have the best knowledge in the world. And I've met students that has the most extreme knowledge. They know everything that's in the book and they still fail the test. That's why these test taking tips I'm going to go through with you guys matters so much. So by doing the questions, I know you have the knowledge. If you have the knowledge, you do the questions, you have good knowledge. Now you got to home in on your test taking skills, which we'll take a look at here. Be ready on the day of the test. I don't think I need to tell you guys, but you guys need to be ready on the day of the exam. You can't go in there feeling hungry. Make sure you eat well. Make sure you sleep well the day before the test. Don't take it in the afternoon. I've taken over 80 exams in my career and I've failed some of them. And the ones I've always failed has always been in the afternoon. So I've forbidden myself from ever doing that again. So I don't recommend anyone take a test in the afternoon. I think in the afternoon, your body wants to shut down. Your body wants to rest and not go into testing mode. So I recommend as early as possible in the morning. Get the earliest slot, 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock maybe. Well, 6 may be too early, but 8 o'clock probably sounds like a good time. I'll tell you guys this. Now, earlier in the series, earlier in this course, in this series of videos, I told you guys to register for your test. When you're registering for your test, I would tell you, if you want to take it next week, let's say next week, Monday, and they have a slot for 5 in the afternoon, I would say wait till the following Monday and take it in the morning. That's how important taking the test at the right time of day is correct. Now, this may be different. If you're an afternoon person, you're going to say, well, I prefer my testing in the afternoon. Well, maybe that works for you, but I would still recommend to take it in the afternoon. I just mentioned eat well. Don't go in there feeling hungry. If you get hungry, you might get fatigued. And exam fatigue really is a problem. You want to go in there feeling good. You don't want to be overstuffed. But again, you don't want to get hungry. Budget for 4 hours. Because when you get in there, it's going to take time to register, for them to identify you. You have to wait to sit down and take the test, and then 3 hours of testing. Eat well. Ask yourself, what fills me up for 4 hours? That's what you should eat right before you walk in the exam center. Let's focus on the questions. So first up, remember you can't go back. That's one of the main things that students have an issue with is, oh, Andrew, I can't go back and I'm going to spend too long on a question. Well, you don't want to spend too long on a question. Try to give it your best answer and move on. Don't spend too long. I know you can't go back, but that's how this works. Let's take a look at Andrew's testing strategies. The first thing up is think like a manager. Every single question you get, remember what I'm telling you. Okay, remember these words. Every single question you get, you ask yourself this. What's the manager's answer? What's the tech answer? You're going to always come in between choices that you're going to say, that one looks good, and this one looks good too. Go with the manager answer. That will probably save you a lot of headache when it comes down to thinking which one of these is best. Because you're going to pull your hair out thinking to yourself, this one looks good and this one looks good. Which one do I go with? Whichever one the manager will go with. How do you know which one the manager will go with? Something broad, something that is high level is probably a good option in terms of what a manager will go with. Here's a tip. Tip number 2. Here's a tip that a lot of my students find valuable. And this is a tip that will probably get you by a quarter of your exam questions. If one choice does the others, then that is the answer. Let me read that again. If one choice does the others, then that's the answer. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're doing a question and it's let's say you're doing a question and it has 3 good answers. A, B, C, D. 4 choices there. A, B, C, D. All the choices to you sounds good. Then which one should you select? Well, if A does B, C, and D, then A is the answer. Do you understand? Listen again. So if you have 4 choices, A, B, C, D, you look at them, you're like, hey, these are all correct. Which one should I go with? Well, the one that does them all. So if A is doing B, C, and D, then that's the answer. In the next video, I'm going to do one where I do a practice question with you and you'll see me apply that theory. The next thing is, if you are doing that choice, you are not doing the others. So I've had a lot of feedbacks from students that have told me that this is one of the best tips that I ever give them. On the exam, you got to choose the best answer. So you get these choices that they all look correct. And in real life, you're probably going to do all of those choices. But on this test, you got to choose one of them. They'll say, which one is more important? Or which one is the primary concern, is what they like to use on there. And you got to say, well, that concerns me more than this. And one way to get this question correct is by telling yourself, well, okay, which one is the most important here is this one. Because if I was to do just one of those choices, I'm not going to do any of those choices. If I was to do just one of those choices, what would that choice be? And that's the correct answer. So say to yourself, in this crazy world of CISSP, I know in the real world I'm going to do them all. But in the crazy world of the CISSP, I'm only doing one. And that's going to be that one. Because that to me is the most important one. Because that one, the failure of that can overtake the failure of the other choices. In the end of my class, in the end of my boot camps, I do practice tests with them. They find it the most vulnerable, the most valuable, keep saying vulnerable, the most valuable section of my class. And I go around a room and I ask them what questions they want me to review. And I review the questions with them. And anyone that gives me a question, I tell them, you must justify your answer. If you selected A, you must tell me why you selected A. You have to be able to justify that answer. The reason for this is because sometimes we read questions. The first thing that pops into our mind was choice A or B or C, and we select it. Let me tell you how exam questions are written. I've written a lot of exam questions for different certification exams. Hey, my PMP questions are some of the best-selling PMP questions on Amazon right now. And what I do when I write questions, and so does your exam maker, what they do is they include something called a distractor. Distractors are choices that seem correct, but it's not actually answering the question. At first glance, they may seem like that's the right answer, but they're not. They're there to distract you. So when you select this answer, when you select B, you should say to yourself, does B actually satisfy all the requirements of this question? And if you're looking at the requirements of the question, then you can say B does, or maybe it doesn't. Because now you're going to say to yourself, here's why B answers this question. That's what you should be saying to yourself. Here's why this answer answers it. Answer the questions and any parts of the question. The next thing is, don't add information to the question. Now that sounds crazy, but there's a lot of times I review questions with students, and you know what they tell me? Well, in this scenario, that's not in the question at all. In this scenario, B would have been correct, but that's not that scenario. Don't add that scenario to the question. People read questions and then they add a whole bunch of information to it to justify why they got the question wrong. I want you to focus just on that question, just that information on the question. Don't add to it. Don't add 2 more paragraphs into a question to justify why you selected the incorrect answer. Stay with just what's given to you. Don't think outside. When you're reading a question, the only word you know is what's in that scenario, in that question. Now, the last tip sounds crazy. Read the question. and read carefully. Now, I know that sounds crazy because, yeah, you should be reading the question. Every time I do my exam review with my students, they love doing this exam review with me because it really changes their mindset. It's the part of the class where students says, oh, now my mind has changed. Now I know exactly how to think. All week I teach them all the topics. I go through all the topics in depth with them. What's a policy? What's symmetric versus asymmetric key encryption? What are firewalls, an IDS system? All week I go through all the topics with them. And now comes the last day of the class. I do the practice questions with them and I'm going through, and by the end of it, I ask a question and I say to you, how many of you guys would have gotten more questions correct if you would have just read these questions more carefully? Everybody raises their hands. No joke. Everybody raises their hands. And I always say to myself, wow, can you imagine if this was the real test? Let me tell you guys something. I think we know this. Passing an exam could be the difference between one question or 20 questions. Sometimes you may pass an exam by the skin of your teeth, just one question. Sometimes you fail an exam by just one question. I remember taking the ITIL intermediate exam. And there was one exam and these exams are like $400. And I failed one exam by one question, by basically 1 point. There were only 8 questions though, and the ITIL intermediate is a very weird exam because there's 8 questions and the 4 choices all have different point values. And I would fail this test by 1 point. And that's because I selected the wrong choice. I had another student who took a CEH class and failed by 1 question. He would pass it at a later date, but failing by 1 question or passing by 1 question. Sometimes if we read the question more carefully, is what's going to allow us to pass. So I'm telling you guys, number 6, read carefully. Don't rush it. Make sure to understand it. Okay, these are some of my best exam tips that I give my students throughout the class, and I give them some other tips, but these are my best tips. Now, let's see how to apply these tips in a practice question.